back to part 2 of the Spalted Beech lamp project. In the first video you'll have seen how I made this, which is the spindle for our lamp. So if you haven't seen that video, then go back and give that one a watch before we go on to turn the base for it. But today in this video we're going to take this piece of beech and we're going to turn a base for our lamp. So the first thing that we need to do is bore a hole in the top here for our wood screw to go in so that we can mount it on the lathe and we can begin to turn and finish the base. Okay, so first we're going to use a centre finder in order to mark the centre hole for our wood screw. I'll use a centre finder, and I usually use 4 lines in order to find an average to have a more accurate centre line. Then once we have our mark, we can take an 8mm drill bit and bore a nice perpendicular hole down through that centre point. About 15mm deep is the amount of depth we need for the wood screw when it's mounted in the scroll chuck. And then once we have that hole drilled, we can screw it onto the screw on the chuck. And we need to make sure that it tightens down nice and flat against the dovetail jaws so that we know that as we're turning it's not going to shift and move out of line when we've already turned a bit. So once we have that on, we're ready to start turning. The first thing I'll do is true up the outer edge, bring it into perfectly round. Once I've done that, I'll face off this to make it perfectly flat. I'll cut a mortice that will go onto my scroll chuck so that I can turn it around to finish turning the base. And it's going to be a deep mortice so that it can allow for a hole to be bored in from the side for the cable to come through and then go up through the spindle to the bulb holder. So once we've got that mortice done, we'll bore this hole and we'll sand and we'll apply finish, ready for us to turn around and turn to the final shape. Now that we have a mortice cut, and it's just under 20mm deep, what I like to do is have a small taper on my bases, running from the outside, getting slightly deeper towards the mortice, so that the base is going to sit perfectly flat on just a small part of the base. It's not going to rock or so if there's a little bit of unevenness on the base or on the surface it's sitting on. So what I'll do now is just use the scraper and slightly taper this here, and then we'll bore a hole in from the side to come through here for the power cable to come through, and then we'll do some shaping on the outside here. We have a nice deep mortice, cut using the skew to the same angle as the dovetail on my jaws. You can see in there the hole for the cable to come through. So what we'll do now is we'll round this edge over here, and we'll begin to do a first sort of shape for the base here. We'll sand it, we'll apply finish, and then it's ready to turn around, and we'll do the top. Apologies everyone, it seems the camera turned itself off during what I was just doing there. So I'll show you now what I've done before I go on to sanding. I've reduced the diameter of the base slightly. It was 6.5 inches across when I started. It's now exactly 6 inches. And I've started to shape the base, putting a slight curve as it comes around here. I'm going to keep the 90-degree corner here so that it will sit flat there. But this curve here is the start of the shape of the top. But what I'll go on and do now is I'll sand it, and I'll show you this time what I do when I apply oil and sand with oil. So I'll sand up to 400 and then I'll put some oil on, and you can see that from there. Okay, so I want to show you this process really to show you what is my favourite part of wood turning, and that is the first coat of oil or any finish that you put on it, when you see the change in the colour of the wood and the grain as it comes out. So what I'm going to do is apply a coat of finishing oil. It's a blend of resins and tung oil. I put this on first and foremost to see just what the wood is going to look like as I finish it, and also I like to put some oil on for the finer grits to help fill in the pores of the wood that might be left open after sanding. So what I'll do is put a bit of oil on a paper towel and I'll just rub it round. don't know if you can really see that on the camera as well as I can see here, but I love the way that it darkens the wood and it really brings out the black of the spalting as well, and all of the grain really starts to deepen and it really jumps out at you. So what I'll do is now I'll get a piece of 400 grit sandpaper and I'll apply some oil to it like that, and I'll just begin sanding with it. And afterwards I give it a wipe down. So what I'll do now is I'll continue that for 600 and for 800, and then I'll apply sanding sealer and friction polish, and then we're ready to turn it around. And now here we are with the base finished and polished. It's come out lovely and smooth. It's got some wonderful spalting there as well. One last thing that we'll do before we switch it around, I probably should have done it before I put the finish on, but I've only just thought about it, and that is to bore a hole up through the base here. I'll put an 8mm bit in my drill chuck and I'll bore that through now before switching it around for the cable to go up. I just remembered why it is I didn't bore the hole already, and it's because I have the wood screw in at the other end, so I can't bore a hole all the way through. But what I'll do now is I'll bore halfway through, so that when I bore the rest of the way through from the other side, it's not going to blow out on the bottom. There we go, the hole's not too bad, it hasn't damaged the finish at all. So we'll turn this around now and we'll start shaping the final base. I haven't fully decided on a shape for the base yet, but what I think I might do is go for a Roman Ogee profile. So I'll start by turning away most of the waste material and then start taking a rough outline just to see how it's going to look, and if I think it looks okay then I'll finish with that. Now I have the basic shape that I'm looking for. I'm going to cut the mortice so that I can try the spindle on the top, just to see how much room I still have on the top in case I need to take a bit more off of that to have it look more in proportion. I've made a pencil line there slightly smaller than what the measurement for the tenon is, so that I can cut out most of the waste and then take small cuts, slowly increasing it until it's a tight fit for the tenon. Okay, so we have a nice fit with the tenon there, but there is still quite a flat spot there, so I'll take just a bit more off of there to bring that curve up so that there's not going to be as large a flat spot at the top there. Once I've done that, we'll be ready to sand and finish. This is the base finished now, and as you can see we have a lovely polished surface, and the spalting looks really quite incredible as well. So there's only two things that we have left to do now. First, to bore the hole all the way through for the power cable, and then we'll glue the spindle into the base, and we'll leave the glue to set overnight before wiring it. So I have my 8mm drill bit in my drill chuck again, and this hole should go through and line up perfectly with the hole that we bored from the other side. I could feel the resistance stop, so I'm pretty sure we've got a nice clean hole all the way through. To glue the spindle base together, I'm going to use Titebond 2 wood glue. I've taken the time to do a dry fit to line the grain up and ensure that it's going to be a tight fit between the spindle and the base here. So what we'll do is we'll put some glue in the mortice and around the tenon, and then we'll use the tailstock to apply pressure to clamp it overnight. I also used the parting tool to remove the finish below where the spindle will sit, to help there be a better bond between the base and the spindle. The finish would have prevented that from happening. We'll leave that to dry now overnight. What's nice about being able to have it still on the lathe as well is in the morning when this is dried, we can go over the entire lamp again, giving it a final polish before we take it off and mount the bulb holder and wire it all together. And here we have the finished lamp. I polished it up again before I took it off the lathe. So we can see that we have a really nice finish on it. So we're ready now to fit the bulb holder and run the cable through it. I already have some antique style flexi cord here that I've wired a plug onto, so all we need to do is screw the fixing plate on. I've already bored pilot holes, so we'll screw it on and then we'll run the cable through. Once the cable is threaded through the lamp body, we can expose the ends of the live, earth and neutral and wire them into the corresponding ports on the bulb holder. Once you have your three wires wired into their terminals, give each one a pull just to make sure that they are secure, because you don't want them to come out when you're operating the lamp. Once you're happy they're secure, then you can pull back down through the lamp body so that that sits nicely inside the brass fitting. Like that. Then you can screw the bayonet holder on over the top.
your finished wired bulb holder. The last thing we want to do is to fit a cable restraint to the underside of the lamp to ensure that the cord isn't going to be pulled out of the brass fitting and create a dangerous situation. So we'll just screw this over the cable into the bottom of the base. Again, I've pre-drilled holes to be able to do this. There we go. That will stop the cable being able to pull out from the terminals. I hope you've enjoyed watching this project. If you have, please hit the like button and share it with your friends so that they can see it too, and leave a comment below telling me what you think. If you're a subscriber, thank you for your support, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so, and check out my other videos on my channel. Thanks for watching.